Thank you, Nico. To die for. D-Y-E, not D-I-E. Today, I want to tell you how hair dye got me out of a rut. But before I get into that story, you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you feel like you're maybe in a rut? Some of us have been home for 18 months, and while things are open, they're not quite open, and we can see our family and friends, but we're still managing this new social dynamic. And so it can still feel like a lot of the same. And when things feel like a lot of the same, we can get into a rut. Well, I was in a rut even before the pandemic. In the summer of 2019, I felt like I was in a rut with motherhood. My kids were younger, and so I revolved my schedule around them. When they woke up, when they went to bed, when they ate, when they needed their diaper changed. As they got older, my life still revolved around their schedule. When they went to school, when they got home from school, when their activities were. And at that point in my career, I was still early on here, and my research still felt like it was the same thing I had done 9 years ago. And I was saying yes to a lot of things because I didn't want to turn down opportunity, but then I felt like I was pulled in so many directions. And outside of motherhood and work, I really didn't have an identity. And so I was in a rut, and I decided in summer 2019, I'm going to get myself out of a rut. I was going to dye my hair. Now I know what you're thinking. That's a small change. I was also approaching 40, so this might have also been a little bit of a midlife crisis. And dyeing my hair was definitely going to be less costly than buying a sports car and less of a big of a change than quitting my job. So let's talk about hair for a moment. Hair has many layers. The outer layer is the cuticle, which is the protective layer, and it's made up of overlapping cells like a fish scales. And underneath the cuticle is the cortex. The cortex is where the pigment of your hair lies. In order to dye your hair, you have to lift or break up that cuticle layer, and then the dye can change the pigment of your cortex, either going from light to dark by depositing color, or going from dark to light, which is removing color, which was my case. Did you know Elle magazine says that Asian hair is one of the toughest hair types to dye for two reasons. First, that protective cuticle layer is stronger than in other hair types. And the second reason is that the color underneath in the cortex can actually be truly black. Now, if you ever painted before and tried to take the color black and make it a different color, you'll know how hard that can be. Oh, did I tell you? I wanted to go silver, not unlike my shirt. That's a color to die for. So to take my Asian hair, which has a stronger cuticle layer, it is truly black in the cortex. First, my hair needed to go platinum blonde, basically stripping the color all out of my hair, and then to put gray into it, or silver into it. Silver is a very hard color, no matter what your hair color is, but to go from black to silver is a drastic change. I told my stylist that I wanted to do this, and she said, we can try. It's going to take a few times in the chair, about 3 hours each. There's no guarantee, but it'll be cheaper than buying a sports car and less drastic than quitting your job. Sign me up. I was so excited. So in the summer of 2019, I got into the chair, and I would like to share with you all my first results. Can you see these results? All right. So this is a before and after of my hair after one 3-hour session. Up in the top corner is my before picture and then my after picture. I loved it. It was such a big change, and I felt like a new person. My kids on the other hand cried a little bit when I got home. They wanted their old mom, but they got over it. And the next day I walked into work with such confidence, like a new person. But I really still wanted to be silver. And so I sat in the chair 2 more times. And if you remember me pre-pandemic, I never got to silver. My hair was so resistant to change. I had to be happy just being blonde. No worries, in December of 2019, after my 3rd session, I cut my losses and accepted being blonde. Because 2020 was going to be my year. It was going to be a change year, such a beautiful number. But I think we were all pretty disappointed with 2020. We all went home, salons closed, and my roots, they slowly grew out. The funny thing is, as my natural hair color came out, I felt like my truer self was also coming out. In terms of work, I was able to speak my mind more, offer dissenting opinions, which is so much easier to do virtually than face to face. And my kids, I shoved them into independence. You gotta figure out this Zoom thing because I don't have time to help you. And they did a really good job. And since I had nowhere to go, I took up hobbies. I put together my puzzle wall behind me. I started a podcast with Jaslyn. It's called Racism Podcast, RACEISMS. So you can find it on all podcast players. We have 3 seasons up. And I felt great. And I don't know if you can see, but I still have some blonde tips left here. And they're a reminder that sometimes a change on the outside can affect change on the inside. And so if you're in a rut, I encourage you to try something new. Maybe it's a physical outside change. Maybe it's taking up a new hobby. Maybe it's turning left instead of right when you go for a walk. Whatever it is, I encourage you to do it to get out of the rut. And maybe you won't need to buy a sports car or quit your job. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster of the Day, and especially Lisa. Thank you for a brilliant speech. I truly can't find much to give you a critique. I'm going to begin by first telling you all the things that you did well. I really appreciate your hand gestures and your facial expressions. I find that you are especially talented in actually doing speeches that are virtual, because as you all know, when we used to do speeches while standing and we could move around the space, we could actually show more of what it is we want to say with our bodies. But Lisa, you actually managed to do this very well with your facial expressions and your hand gestures, and also with the way you speak. You often turn away, like when you were talking about your kids, or so you create a lot of interest just in the way you speak. Another thing that I found really good in the way in this speech was your organization. You began with, about to die. You kind of gave us this pun, the DIE with the DIYE, and I'm very fond of actually word puns or word games. And then you went on to explain regarding your rut. So your speech was extremely methodical and extremely well organized, and you interdispersed humor in your speech, which I believe was also one of the things that you needed to check in this speech, which you have. The second thing you needed to check as well, I believe, was relating to your audience. Who among us didn't experience some form of a rut in our lives, whether it's now or not? And actually, specifically, who hasn't attempted to dye their hair? I actually do the opposite of what you do. I usually dye the white to my natural color. That's my attempt, because I have a lot of white now. So now that I spoke about all the things that you did well, I'd like to also add that I appreciated some of the facts that you also interdispersed regarding Asian hair and hair in general, where the pigment goes within the dye, that you have to lift it first to be able to place it. So that was also beautiful. Another part that I appreciated as well was how you spoke about how when your natural hair color returned, as though you were returning to a self of yours that was even stronger. So I appreciated that your speech not only had a story, but also had a moral. So something that we could learn from as your audience. So now, two small things which I will share. One of them is I wish to see the picture of the blondest blonde, because you did mention it, and I was grateful that you showed us one picture, because I actually couldn't have visualized that without it. And that's really the only thing that I saw that I wanted, maybe one more picture. I wish I'm better at giving good, constructive criticism, but I didn't see anything that I felt I really could add to. So I must be honest. Thank you so much, Lisa. Well done. Congratulations.